This is what we have all been waiting for, a massive wave of class changes affecting both PvE and PvP in this update, and I am so glad that I didn't go out for my little daily nature walk before Blizzard decided to drop this bombshell of class changes. If you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, then smash that subscribe button. Thank you for your support, and let's get started. Frost Death Knights in PvE, you are receiving a 6% damage buff to Frost Strike and Obliterate, but not in PvP. Icy Death Torrent damage is being reduced by 10%, and Glacial Advance damage is being reduced by 10%, but not in PvP. So overall in PvP, just Icy Death Torrent going down 10%. Not really a Frost Death Knight main. I don't think this is a big impact to your overall damage in PvP, but in PvE, getting some buffs to Frost Strike and Obliterate is definitely going to be up your damage. Balanced Druids. This was one that, needed some help and attention in PvE, but in PvP was doing all right. So I'm curious to see what they've done as far as balancing those against each other. Umbral Intensity is going to increase the damage of Wrath by 20 to 40, down from 25 to 50, and Starfire by 15 to 30, down from 50. So they really want to nerf the Starfire damage modifiers. I kind of wish that they went after the Elune hero talent tree as opposed to the baseline talent tree, because now this makes Umbral Intensity worse with Keeper of the Grove. There was a talent on the hero talent trees for Boomkins that increases Starfire by like 65%. I'd rather that Starfall damage have been reduced, so that way you could still run Umbral Intensity as the Keeper of the Grove build. This might have bad implications with that. But Star Surge and the trade-off is getting a 12% damage buff, and Starfall is getting a 20% damage buff. So I'm definitely going to be trying my other two builds. I have those in my Discord. Also, if you tune into my stream, constantly updating the talent tree, is going to be pumping out some guides as well in the near future. But this Starfall change definitely has my eyes on a Keeper of the Grove Starfall build. Harmony of the Heavens increases Eclipse power by 2% per proc, max 6, and this is up from 1% per proc, up max 5. So a little bit of a buff here. So buff towards your spenders, nerfs towards your builders. I know a lot of complaints in PvE about the Starfire damage, and obviously is peaking a bit high in PvP, and I think there's also PvP specific changes, so I have to see that as well. So I think this is the logical trade-off for them. For Feral Druids, Blood Talons and Lion Strength now also increases the damage of Rampant Ferocity. For Devastation Evoker, you're getting a 6% damage buff to all of your abilities. Firestorm is getting a 20% damage buff, and its duration is being reduced to 10 from 12. Now, Firestorm being a stationary AoE, I think is one of the main reasons why it's kind of tough to actually execute on it effectively in PvE, and then also in PvP, but the 6% damage buff is definitely going to be felt good in the game as a whole. Flame Shaper got a 30% buff for engulf damage, so Devastation and Preservation Evokers may want to try and give this hero talent tree a second look if you weren't before. Pack Leader for Hunters. Vicious Hunt damage has been increased by 10% for BM, and it's been increased 10% for Survival. When Vicious Hunt's damage reaches a certain point, it can cause Kill Command to dominate Survival's rotation. This adjustment and subsequent compensation are meant to ensure Pack Leader Survival Hunters are utilizing the other tools at their disposal. Howl of the Pack critical strike damage bonus increased to 5% for BM, up from 3%. And Howl of the Pack critical strike damage bonus increased to 11%, up from 7% for Survival. Furious Assault damage bonus increased to 60% for Survival, up from 30%. And Cull of the Herd damage over time increased to 60% for Survival, up from 30%. So it seems like a much more significant buff for Survival. Curious to see what the PvP specific changes are for each of these. BM Hunter was one spec that definitely needed some help when it comes to PvP. For Fire Mage, Living Bomb's getting a little bit of damage back put into it, 30% damage increase. Pyroblast, 5% damage increase, and Flame Strike, 10% damage increase. Fire got absolutely annihilated on some changes recently in the beta, so this is kind of rewinding some of those. I don't know if it's enough on its own, at least for PvP. Frostfire mages are seeing a 25% damage increase for Frostfire Bolt for fire, trying to get people out of Sun Fury mage, but not for Frost, it seems like. And Burden of Power on Sun Fury can no longer be double dipped by spell queuing. I'm uncertain as to what that exactly means, but it sounds like you're going to get a nerf. Arcane Phoenix damage dealt reduced by 10% for Arcane, and Arcane Soul base duration reduced to 2 from 3. So Sun Fury nerfs, again, this is ongoing tuning that they talked about in terms of trying to make the hero talent trees more competitive with each other and more viable, which I think is good for the game as a whole. For Retribution Paladin, your mastery, High Lord's Judgment damage has been reduced by 10%. For example, at level 80, 180 mastery rating now grants 1.35% mastery, down from 1.5. And all holy spell damage has been increased by 5% baseline, though, regardless of that. In exchange, it seems like that. So maybe mastery is not as important of a stat, is what they're trying to go for this, and try and equalize out what you can go for if you want to go for haste, because I think Red got some rework talents that scale off haste. Correct me if I'm wrong about that, Red Paladins, in the comments down below, but this seems like a quality of life change in terms of trying to open up more stat allocation. For Disc Priest, Oracle Discipline Priest Preventative Measures now increases power with shield absorption by 40%, up from 25, but not in PvP, and I think that makes sense. The shield absorbs from Disc Priest are kind of getting out of control in PvP, so I think I'm glad that they jumped that. Atonement healing increased by 100% outside of raid. It was 70, but also not in PvP. Fixed an issue where atonement critical healing was not increased by the correct amount outside of raid, so that's going to be a little bit of a buff to crit healing. And then Purge the Wicked and Shadowward Pain is just getting a 20% damage increase that will be applied to PvP. For Shadow Priest, Void Weavers, Void Blast. Thank God they did this for Shadow Priest, man. I wanted a level of Shadow Priest, and then they gutted all the damage out of Void Blast, and I was like, I don't know if I want to do that anymore. And they're starting to put some of it back. They're putting some of it back. I am glad they're doing this for Shadow. For Elemental Shaman, your mastery, Elemental Overload's bonus to all elemental and physical damage increased by 35%. All damage, though, has been reduced by 6. So this is similar. They buffed your mastery maybe to make mastery seem more desirable, but then nerfed all your damage overall baseline as a compensation for that. Stormbringer, Tempest now deals 65% of its damage to enemies near its primary target, up from 50. And Tempest now deals reduced damage, though, beyond 5 targets. So you're not going to get that massive stack cleave with this. And again, in PvP, this AoE damage is not relevant, but in PvE, that's going to be quite a lot. For Enhancement Shaman, oh no. There has to be compensations in the PvP section. I'm just going to say that right now. There has to be. But all damage reduced by 4%. But your Ele Blast damage is going up by 12%. You're getting the same buffs to Tempest with a 15% AoE, but reductions in your overall beyond 5 targets. Totemic Tremor damage is getting increased by 10%. And Searing Volley damage is getting increased by 80%. That's a big number. I think this is the Searing Totems, which is like a cool little fantasy mechanic for Enhance, which is definitely going to be worth checking out. And I can't imagine that there aren't going to be something to offset that nerf there. In the PvP section, Destro, you're just getting a 5% damage increase to all abilities. I think that makes sense. Your Chaos Bolt damage is really lackluster, so I'm very excited to see what's going down exactly in the PvP section. For Druids, Rip and Rake is getting a 15% damage increase. That's all Druids. So if you're a cat weaving Resto Druid, and even Boomkin, I've been playing Rake a little bit, but Rip damage as well for Feral, and Feral was already doing really well, so that's a pretty big buff. For Boomkin, Lunar Calling now increases Starfire. This is the Starfire talent that I was talking about that I think would have been better to target on the overall, because now this is getting nerfed and the other one is getting nerfed. So I really don't think you're going to see really big Starfires anymore. You might actually just completely abandon the Elune hero talent tree. And Umbral Embrace also got a PvP modifier nerf. It increases damage of Wrath and Starfire by 40%, down from 75. This is a lot of double dipping on this, so like this may have just been taken out of the game, which is a little bit disappointing because I actually was starting to like the Starfire build. Feral Druid, Taste for Blood's damage increase to Ferocious Bite during Tiger's Fury, though, is decreased by 50%, so that's a trade-off. They're targeting the spells that are critting over 2 million, I think, is what is going on with these changes. And then Saberjaw's effectiveness is now reduced by 50% in PvP combat. So those two were outliers on critting over 2 mil, but I feel like 2 mil as like a top-end crit wasn't that bad with how high the health pools are, especially for abilities that are either like really long cast or require a lot of combo points. So burst damage is going to be going down significantly with these two changes. For Frost Mage, Ice Lance is getting a 30% reduction. It's only going to be increased by 45%, down from 75%. I'm worried about the lethality of the game now, because I actually just played my Frost Mage last night and was having a lot of fun with it. Obviously, Ice Lance damage, I think, needed to be reallocated, but if it just gets completely removed and not reallocated anywhere, then I think Frost Mage is going to become non-threatening, so this is a bit concerning. Mastery of Harmony, Manifestation is now 50% effective in PvP combat. I don't know what that is because I haven't spent a lot of time with Monk. All I know is that they were really good in Battlegrounds, although I don't feel like Mistweaver was standing up that much actually at level 80. And that seems like a pretty significant nerf. Let me know, Mistweavers, in the comments. Brewmaster, Chi Burst damage reduced by 30% for Brewmaster monks in PvP. They noticed you, Brewmaster monks. I'm mostly talking to Grief Fist, the one dude who actually is just playing it a lot. They noticed you. They saw what you're doing, and they're on to you. They nerfed you. Mistweaver Monk, Peace Weaver now reduces the cooldown of Revival only by 33% down from 50, but Life Cocoon is now 30% more effective, and Enveloping Mist can no longer be purged. So you're getting big single target healing effects out of this at the cost of AoE, which is obviously really good in Battlegrounds, I think is the trade-off of this. This is like them trying to make Mistweaver a bit better in Arena and smaller group combat, but less powerful in Battlegrounds, which is honestly what Mistweaver needed. So I think this is a good direction for it. The numbers exactly, I don't know, but it's definitely the right direction. For Holy Priest, Prayer of Mending is getting a 65% increase in PvP combat. Holy Priest definitely need a little love, and there it is. There it is. Like I said about the Shadow Priests, there it is. Lava Lash, 60% damage increase. Storm Strike, Wind Strike, 60% damage increase. Wind Fury attack damage, 60% increase for Enhancement Shaman. That 4% nerf up top caught us all off guard a little bit, but do not worry. You are getting buffs. Warrior, Thunderous Roar damage is getting reduced by 15%. For Arms Warrior, auto attack damage is no longer decreased by 12%, so Arms are getting a damage buff on its auto attacks. For Fury Warrior, Odin's Fury damage is reduced by 20%. So again, targeting like these heavy kind of lethal abilities, I think Fury Warrior was definitely on the chopping block for nerf. I think it got nerfed less hard than, I guess it's a double dip, right? Because Thunder Roar and Odin's Fury, and these are both big AoEs, especially in Battleground situations. I think overall this is a decent set of changes. Definitely addressed a couple of the pain points. I think BM Hunter probably needed a little bit more attention as far as buffs are concerned, and possibly even Fire Mage, but it's definitely a good round of changes in the right direction, I think, for the game, Mythic Plus, PvP, Battlegrounds, Arenas as a whole. So I hope you guys enjoyed this update. Thank you guys very much for tuning in, and I will see you in the next one.